Welcome everybody as you hop into our faculty Q&A Zoom session. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being patient as we took a few minutes to get you added in. Back in the office, and the Wi-Fi and internet is giving me trouble. It's been out of use for the past year as we've been working from home. So I apologize for that. My name is Michael Strawsburg, and I'm the Prospective Student Coordinator for both of these degrees, Christian Apologetics and Science and Religion. And I've been doing that for the past 8 years and really enjoy getting to connect with potential and current students. Just there's so much variety within our program, which isn't always typical for a seminary degree. But apologetics isn't typical either. And so we get a wide variety of people from all sorts of backgrounds all over the US and internationally. And each of them gets to bring a very unique perspective. And I always feel it's very much similar to the body of Christ and kind of the church. And we get to find a home for everybody and be able to talk about something that everybody's here on this call is interested and passionate about, and be a part of a community where you can find like-minded believers, even if you're not surrounded by those, in your particular area, and maybe you're looking to impact your local community or workplace or church with this training. So I'm very glad to see you all here. Just a couple quick things. Feel free to use the chat feature by typing in any questions throughout our time this morning. And those can be simple questions about the program or admissions or things like that. My colleague Megan Strickland is on this call to be able to participate in the chat and answer questions as we go through. And then you can use the raise hand feature, and I'll go ahead and call on different people to ask specific questions to our two guest faculty members today. And if you want, you can kind of start off just popping onto the chat and sharing where you're joining us from and which program you're interested in. And if you do have any questions right off the bat that you came into this knowing you wanted to ask, you can feel free to go ahead and chat that as well. So I will let Dr. Guta go ahead and give a brief introduction of himself first, and then he can hand it over to Dr. Smith.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see each and every one of you this morning. My name is Mihretu Guta, and I teach at apologetics and science and religion programs. But I belong to the second category, science and religion program. But I teach metaphysics, epistemology, world religions and science, other courses like philosophy of physics, philosophy of neuroscience, and those kinds of things. So I love philosophy. And I've edited and written many things in the area of the philosophy of mind. And I am so glad to see you this morning, and I'll be happy to be part of the Q&A session this morning. Thank you.
There. I'm Dr. Scott Smith. I teach things like the ethics course, philosophy of religion. I'll be coordinating the bioethics class, as well. I do some other classes, like right now I'm doing one on worldview analysis, and then I do some ones in my particular areas of interest or specialties. I like working on issues with naturalism in terms of being able to have knowledge. I really don't think we can have knowledge on that basis. That's another way of addressing naturalism. Postmodernism, looking at that and addressing it too. And right now I am up to about here in critical race theory and trying to address that philosophically and ethically as well. So glad to be with you. I think I'm starting my 22nd year, teaching here. So glad to be with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here. I'm glad we got another group of prospective students here. We did one on Tuesday that was in the evening. So we were kind of testing out different times and dates. So I'm glad that you guys were able to join us for this one. One thing to point out is both these programs are kind of interrelated and connected. The Christian Apologetics program started first, and then the Science and Religion program started 4 or 5 years after that, if I'm correct, Dr. Smith.
Something like that.
Yeah. They share a foundation in biblical studies and theology, as well as a research and writing course and a spiritual formation element to the program. So they're very closely tied together, and they also can overlap a lot with elective choices for students. So a lot of times we get people who are trying to figure out what's the best program. I know I want to do grad studies. I'm interested in, apologetics, but maybe science and religion, or maybe philosophy or theology, or how do all these kind of work together, and which one's the best for me? So that'll be one thing that might come up, and you do have the freedom to really overlap a lot, where you might be in Christian apologetics and decide you want to take a couple classes that gear more towards philosophy, or specific areas of science. Whether that's intelligent design, or maybe biblical archaeology is something you've always been interested in or would like to teach at your church or something like that. Or vice versa, for science and religion students, that's already a specified degree where you're getting the scientific evidence and philosophy components. But you might say, I am not going to go through this program and not take Why God Allows Evil, or another class that you think is really critical to understanding that really kind of applies in a broad way, to everybody you might be interacting with. So just a little bit of an overview. And then this time is really for you to just have a more personal connection and opportunity to engage with these wonderful professors who really put a lot of effort into, you'll see this just through this short time with them, into caring for our students and engaging with them, and really, they really enjoy what they do. So does anybody want to kick us off and be the first brave person to ask a question? It can be anything. All right, Anthony, and then we'll go to Joanna. Anthony, looks like you're still muted.
Yeah.
Happens to everybody.
Okay, great. Better?
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess my question would be, I have a MACE from DTS, and so, and they have a apologetic. They just started, but I think at least I know you guys have had that grand reputation for quite some time for your work there and the classes there. So a couple of things, I guess. My questions would be directed: what type of credit hours would I be required coming with that type of degree already? And is there any option for a doctoral degree in apologetics, again, coming with those MACE degree from DTSs? How would that work? Or, I mean, I know that's probably very subjective. Seems like each person is different and each place is different, but if you, even in general terms, that'd be great.
Dr. Smith.
Well, I know Dallas, at least in the past, has tended to do a lot of their, I may be mixing this up. I think it's the doctrine classes, the theology classes, where they really break them down in, in smaller chunks, or smaller units, of doctrines than we tend to. So I think it would depend on overall how many you've taken, how well they match up to our essential Christian doctrine 1 and 2.
Sure.
But you would have a very strong likelihood, of being able to meet those. I would think. I'd have to look at the transcript itself, but
Sure.
Same with New Testament survey, Old Testament survey.
Mhm.
With a master's under your belt already, there's a good chance, that we could waive the 510 research and writing class, but but part of that may be dialogue with you of how well you think you're equipped to write argumentative, kinds of essays.
Correct.
If so, that would free up an elective unit for you. You may have other things that we could bring in as elective transfers. So you could have potentially up to 15 units come in from another master's, leaving you 24, to go. And I think you asked about doctoral and that kind of work in apologetics.
Right.
I forget the requirements offhand at Southern Baptist, but they have one, theology and apologetics. Sean McDowell, one of my colleagues, went through that, too. I think he got into that with 2 masters under his belt, New Testament and MA philosophy from here. There's also liberties. Now they want to have a thesis. So that would be something you probably should put on your plan if you wanted to be able to be considered there. I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think they've really changed that. We did have one of our grads, well, we've had a couple of our grads, Mihretu and I were talking about someone yesterday who did both of our programs and got into their doctoral and finished it in theology and apologetics. And then another guy, I think he came out with just the MA apologetics and maybe had to make up some extra courses, in that too. Those are 2 right off the bat, but I know some of the Southern Baptist schools, I think more of them are trying to offer doctorates in apologetics as well. Does anybody know for sure on that? Anybody else here? Michael or Mihretu or?
I don't know.
Okay.
But there are some schools who can offer PhD.
The only reason I ask, I mean, they've offered me to do a doctoral, a D-admin, and it would have, you can guide that considerably. They'll contour it for you within some certain boundaries. So I could probably, with some of their new apologetics that they're doing, move a little bit in those directions, especially under some of the things like you talked about, which would interest me greatly. So some of the things like, the CRT, the postmodernisms, the worldviews, things that I can take into the church today that are current and relevant topics, I think, for where we are. But have a much greater understanding of those are things that would definitely interest me. I mean, apologetics is so broad in its spectrum. There are many ways you can go there, but for me, those kind of things would be things that I think are having to be dealt with today or in coming days, maybe even in greater amounts. To be able to speak well to those would be wonderful, but so anyway, that's why I asked about that, because they had almost encouraged me, instead of coming back to do another master's, they said, look, we think you have enough experience in what you did last time. We would just rather see you, or definitely are willing to give you the option to come back and do a doctoral. So I was like, okay, great. So, but I've always had interest in Biola. I always kind of watched that. And so that's why I thought, okay, this would be a great place to come and just get more information and hear more about what I might or may not be able to do.
Well, several of us are trying to address these topics. Postmodernism is one of my specialties. I've waded around in that quite a bit. In fact, that's what I did my dissertation on and written on since. And I think I'm becoming an expert in critical race theory, as well. I'm writing the manuscript on that right now. And another faculty member at Talbot already has a book out, a bit more from a theological, kind of angle, Thaddeus Williams. So he would be here too. You could take advantage of him. I would encourage you though also, as Mihretu was talking about, his metaphysics and epistemology course, I think you will see more in those various topics if you get that background as well. I tend to teach those, trying to bring out the philosophical emphases behind these, and not just those. But when you see those things, you can start making, and the worldviews then too, and you can start making all sorts of connections. And Biola's, especially Talbot, is very strong in philosophy. Mihretu and I are both products of that MA program. And
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
I'll add just one quick thing. The number of electives options that we offer is really second to none. I just talked to a gal yesterday who's starting off at another school with a relatively brand new apologetics program, and you get to pick 4 electives, but they can be one of these 6 classes.
Right.
And she applied and got accepted to our program and is planning on taking a few of our classes as supplemental classes, just because they don't have a specialized class in youth apologetics or in dealing with apologetics and critical race theory or social justice or artificial intelligence or some of these other practical cultural apologetics, different things like that. So that's one real benefit, especially as you mentioned, already having a lot of the biblical studies kind of background.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Hi, this is Joanna. I'm here in Orlando, Florida. So thank you for having this remotely. I'm looking into, I'm getting my bachelor's degree next month in marketing, which is what I've been doing for 20 years, but I have a passion for apologetics, and that's why I went back to school, so I could get a master's in it. One of the things, I've been doing school online for 4 years, part-time. One of the things that I've now experienced is the lack of communication with professors, the lack of engagement with my peers. And that's something that I don't want to do again. I don't want to go to a class and wait 5 weeks for a professor to respond. I don't want to not know who I'm in the program with. I want it to definitely be something like this, where is there any potential for that? Is there a remote Zoom class? It doesn't have to be every class, but that there's more of the same program where we have this format where we can see each other and I don't have to fly to California every time I want to see somebody.
Mihretu, maybe you should speak to some of that.
Yes, in all of my classes, I always offer an option of, let's say, meeting every single week at the end of each week to discuss, the content of that particular week's, kind of reading. And I also give opportunities for the students to reach out to me anytime they want, and we can talk with my students over the Zoom or a Skype, whichever venue works for them. So I always do that. So it has been excellent so far, and the students really like it. And yeah, so every single week in all of my classes, I meet with my students every single week. So yeah.
And what about other professors, or are there?
Yeah. And to give you a broader perspective, I think there's a lot of things that have come out of COVID. One of the I think added benefits for our professors is just kind of like, all right, everybody's even though some of our professors like Dr. Guta have been doing Zoom for a while and have been connecting in that way, others haven't, and so it's really kind of forced that in a very good way for the benefit of everybody. And I think a lot of them have been surprised, like, oh, wow, I actually really enjoy this and look forward to it. So in terms of course structure, the majority of the classes will have the flexibility. So they'll be set up in kind of an asynchronous format, because we do have students from all different time zones and schedules. So there's usually a recorded lecture portion to a class and assigned reading or participation on a discussion board. We use Canvas as our learning platform, and you log in there and you can post answers to the questions for each week and interact with the various posts from your classmates. You can put a little profile up of yourself, a photo and a description of kind of who you are, and get to know each other and interact with your professor for that class. But you have the freedom within your schedule to kind of do that when it works in your week. Then most professors will offer up, if not all of them are going to be as available as Dr. Guta is and have it, every week, but typically we'll set up something at the, at the minimum kind of, all right, 4 times throughout the year, we're checking in and we're making this available to students so we can have that, via Zoom. Secondly, there is a faculty cohort that is set up for all students. So all of our incoming fall students will join this and be assigned to a particular professor, and they will set up a time that works best for the majority of the people. This is optional, but provides outside of the class time to connect, just like we're doing right now. And they'll do that about 4 times throughout the semester. And then every year we rotate the groups, and you'll get assigned with a different faculty member and set of students to really kind of further get to know them. The last thing that I'll mention is there are some classes where you'll go at the class schedule and you can specifically choose, I do want to pick this class because it does have a set live lecture component to it. So Old and New Testament are regularly offered with both options, recorded or a live, Zoom lecture. And some of those might be a weekly evening one that works perfect for you. And you're like, oh, great, I want to take that. Other times it might be, it's spread out, but every, 3rd Saturday, there's a, 3-hour, Zoom lecture. The last thing I'll say kind of in that vein is we do special topic classes, and our professors can share a little bit more about those further on. But those are offered in what we've called like a weekend seminar format, where you have a class going online throughout the semester, but then there's 2 days, a Friday and Saturday, that are announced usually 6 months or more in advance with the topic and professor to say, okay, these 2 days we're going to go in depth so that students can join via Zoom, or now that California and LA have lifted stuff, come in person. So if either you're local or if you want to come out to have some of that engagement, you can do that for a weekend. You can do that. But either way, you have the kind of some of those opportunities for more of this personal type interaction.
Quick,
Okay, I appreciate that. No.
Couple quick things I'd say. I've just not been able to, do Zooms as regularly as Dr. Guta has. But I still try to, have, a couple times during the semester, do that with courses that are otherwise, all based in Canvas with recorded lectures, too. But what I'll also do is try to respond if somebody's like, hey, can I have a chance to talk with you, about this or this? And I'll have several things, and it's like, sure, let's do it. And we'll get on Zoom, or if they just want a, phone call or whatever. I try to make myself very available, on those and quickly. And by the way, a 5-week lag and hearing back from a prof is just unacceptable. Yeah, that should not happen. And if in the wild case that did happen here, please speak to one of us so that we can remedy that. That's just unacceptable, in my book. The other quick thing is this kind of screen I'm looking at right now with Zoom. This is like it was for me with my worldview analysis class, a weekend seminar. And we had a great time. I mean, I haven't met every single one of those people in person before COVID, but it's still, it's not to me, it's not as good as being face-to-face. Nonetheless, we really, we built some relationships there and had some really good times of interacting, really good. So anyway, couple comments, to toss in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, just right before, and I'll get to you, Alex, just to mention, in addition to worldview analysis, this past semester, Sean McDowell, as special topics weekend seminar classes, did Christian sexual ethics. Dr. Smith did a brand new class on apologetics and social justice. And then we had a third one, Dr. Guta. You thought I might forget you. Philosophy of physics. And then in the upcoming fall semester, if any of you are looking to start in the fall, we have a student favorite that we offer about every year and a half or 2 years, Youth Apologetics with Sean McDowell and Jay Warner Wallace. And then also a brand new class with JP Moreland, Miracles in the Modern Mind. So those are kind of upcoming, and each semester you're able to see, along with our regular required classes and regular electives that are always kind of available every semester a year. All right, what are some of the new, classes that I might want to take? But great question. Thanks, Joanna. Alex, go ahead.
Keith, I think.
Hey guys.
Keith,
Yeah,
I even saw that and was going to chat you and say, Keith,
Hey.
not Alex, you're up next. And then I still did it.
Yeah, you're good. My buddy used my computer and months ago, and I can't figure out how to change it. So I should, but I don't know how. Anyways, good to meet you all. I'm coming in from Grand Rapids, Michigan, recent graduate of Kuiper College, which is a reformed, not denominationally affiliated, but it's a reformed Bible college. I'm currently starting a YWAM base here in Grand Rapids. So yeah, like evangelism and apologetics is my thing. It's what I plan to spend my life doing, and I enjoy doing it. A couple questions just about the program though. I was sort of educated in more of a reformed background, and I'm not married to a particular eschatology, but I would lean more like a millennialist at the moment. I read something about adherence to the faith statement for admission. I'm not sure if I read that right, but I'm a Christian. I hold the Apostles' Creed and evangelical, all of that. But I can't say that I'm like a dispensationalist, premillennialist. Am I still allowed to come? That's my first question. So maybe you could answer that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we do have that as our teaching position, and faculty hold to that. That's part of our full doctrinal statement that goes into a lot more depth and lets you know where we are coming from as an institution and our set of beliefs. But we are non-denominational, and so that really does open us up to really some very valuable conversations, because how often do you interact with people from various denominations and have substantive conversations about these things. The eschatology part is covered in Central Christian Doctrine 2, so that will be a topic that's covered, but that by no means you holding a particular view on end times does not exclude you from the program whatsoever. I can share with you and send the 7 kind of key statements are listed out and are very just central to Christian orthodoxy and are nothing very specific.
Yeah, I read the whole faith statement thing on the website, and I'm down with all of it except that just there's a few things on the non-essentials that
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And
Yeah.
so that's not, I take it that's not going to be like a key component of the apologetics curriculum,
No,
like
no.
that particular view.
No, it's not going to be a requirement, for you to hold that in order to, be admitted. I mean,
Okay.
we're gonna look at that topic in like the class
Yeah.
Michael mentioned.
I want to look at it. I just,
Mhm.
yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. And then, so one thing I'm sort of interested in and wondering if the program will sort of tackle these issues. 2 things that I'm bumping up against in my ministry area right now are more like theological liberalism, and so issues regarding inspiration of scripture in the church, so biblical inerrancy, Mosaic authorship of the Pentateuch, things like that. That's one area that I'm currently dealing with. And then I minister in an area where there's a lot of occult activity, and so demonic possession, there's a lot of just people doing witchcraft and things like that. And so I'm part of a church that's planted right in the center of that sort of area in our city. It's not something that I'm like unfamiliar with. It's just something that I'd like to have more apologetic tools when I'm dealing with that, so that I'm equipped to answer more deeper questions than just it's wrong, don't do it. Would you say that there's like part of the curriculum would cover those issues?
And I could, I'll speak to that. First of all, about theological liberalism and inspiration and authority and even inerrancy of Scripture. That would be something specifically addressed in our Scripture, Authority, Canon, and Criticism class. And then I think it would be reinforced, like with, well, you may have had some of this, you may not need to take it again, but some would be reinforced in like Old Testament survey, as far as Mosaic authorship, and some of that. This is one of the
But we were taught the documentary hypothesis, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in that, but that's what I was taught.
One of the things I think that I find, because I evaluate transcripts of incoming students, is that very rarely have people had sufficient coursework elsewhere to match up with our Scripture, Authority, Canon, and Criticism class. It's pretty unique, but very important, I think. And so I think that would give you a lot, on the first set of topics. On the second, two things. I would encourage you, whenever it comes around, take the occult class with Kevin Lewis, Professor Lewis. He also does Essential Christian Doctrine 1 and 2. He's our main theologian on our team. But I also would encourage you to get to know two people, Tom Sappington, as well as Clint Arnold. They are two faculty members of Talbot. Dr. Arnold's the dean also. They've got practical experience in the latter area.
Well, is Clint Arnold and
Tom Sappington, Sappington. Did I spell that right, guys? I think.
I'll look it up shortly after this. Sorry, go ahead.
I'd encourage you to reach out to them.
Okay. I know that Neil Anderson was a graduate of Talbot. I use his material when I'm working with people that are struggling with those things. Does he do, is he ever a guest lecturer?
I don't know, as far as now goes. I think he has in the past. I don't know if he does now. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Definitely. And I'll mention one thing to kind of tie into that, Keith, is that one of the required classes is Comparative Religions. That's a required class, but you are able to substitute a variety of similar classes that deal with other religions to count and meet that requirement. That can be Apologetics to Islam. Some people, that's their community that they're witnessing to. Apologetics to, there's a Mormonism, History and Doctrine class, cults, and the occult, demonology and occult class. So any of those can be taken, as well as Comparative Religions. Comparative Religions is the main class and is the broader class, but you can go deeper into any of those or take both and have one of those other classes count as an elective credit.
Okay. Question in regards to those classes: is it possible to obtain like the syllabus for any of those classes in order to sort of pick which one I feel like would be helpful?
Yes. So typically what I'll do is I'll read as new students are coming in and applying. We have a helpful resources page that's meant for, really our kind of new and current students to be able to see all of our previous syllabi, especially for special topic classes and what was offered in the previous semester, to kind of evaluate course load and, some of those special topics classes. So that's definitely something that I can share with you. And it's also a great resource for new students. It has amazing stuff on all the library resources that are available, which has expanded a ton, so that you can get like emailed to you a PDF of just a chapter of a book from the library, or they have different mailing services. They have interlibrary loans and a lot more that's electronically available. So that's been a big boost in the last few years for our distance students. So yes, I'll make that available. And then you'll work with myself going into the first semester to advise you on your classes and get enrolled and go through all the things for the first time. And then Megan Strickland is our academic advisor that guides you throughout the whole program, checking off the required courses and your electives and kind of judging the pace and what works for you and working towards your degree. So you'll have that support and a little bit of insight throughout the degree.
Okay. Thanks so much.
You bet. You bet. All right. Joanna had another question. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned something about reviewing transcripts to get into the program. I have no formal training in Bible, religion, or anything like that. I've been doing everything on my own. So what are the requirements? Do I need to take a class or something beforehand?
No, you'll need that bachelor's degree, so you'll have that. And this beyond that, as far as academic stuff, no, just have that and then your recommendations and that sort of thing. Your statements you have to provide, but academically, no, you don't have to.
Perfect, thank you. And then a follow-up to that is the program timeline. So I am a full-time worker. I do this part-time. Is there a certain requirement to get it done within a certain amount of time, minimum amount of classes to take?
Really. In reality, the registrar has a 7-year kind of deadline. As Dr. Smith has mentioned, he's been here for 22 years. And, yesterday he's like, I haven't run into anybody who's been like, no, you're, cutting you off. That restarts, if somebody takes a semester off, which often happens if, there's different family or personal life stuff that we all deal with. You guys are our demographic and most of our students are, I'd say, probably 35 to 65, with some people under and over that. Our oldest is 84 and is 30 credits into the program and doing great. There's no minimum each semester. You can take just one class. 5 credits is required for scholarships or financial aid to use like a federal loan. That's the only kind of minimum there. And if you're looking to be full-time, that's 9 credits a semester for other people out there. But you can really pace it each semester based upon kind of what you have going on. You don't have to take summer classes, but there are options, to do that if you'd like to kind of spread things out. But when they created the program, it really was designed for the adult, learner, people coming back to school.
Yes.
Dr. Smith, maybe you can just share just a tiny bit about the research and writing class. I know that I'd say from my experience, probably 80% of our students don't have a bachelor's degree in Bible theology or something related. It is everything under the sun. And then some who do have that and some who have, graduate degrees in theology or New Testament or something like that. So that's certainly not unusual at all.
The research and writing class, I'm not quite sure what you're thinking, having say there, but it's a great introduction, to step into kind of what's the kind of writing, that we're looking at, argumentative kinds of essays, a thesis, and then defending it, but also dealing with key objections, the appropriate sources, all that kind of stuff. It'd be a great way to, I'd encourage, it may not work practically in your schedules, but I really recommend doing it in the first or second semesters of the program to get started. One caution on it, it's a lot of work and it moves quickly. So don't overload yourself in the get-go if you're taking that class too, because it's officially 5 weeks and maybe one more week to turn in the final paper, but it moves fast. And it's an adjustment, but it's also a way to get acclimated, and you'll have probably some topics to choose from in apologetics. Some will be related to science and religion because we'll have both sets of students, in that class, as well.
Yep. Yeah, it's really meant just so that from whatever background you come from, you feel prepared with, how to do citations, how to formulate your papers before you're having to do that. And you're joined with all of the new, typically incoming, Christian apologetics and science and religion students, which is also nice just to form that bond with everybody.
Which is really true. I've really found that you really do form those bonds through that class.
Even online?
Even online. It's amazing. The way I would do it, I taught it the last 2 semesters, full semesters, and I would have everybody introduce themselves in Canvas, for the beginning. And I may have like 30 people, maybe, in the first batch. And how many posts did I have in that intro week? Oh my goodness, people responded. I had maybe 5 times that many posts at the end of that week. Because people say, oh, you have this interest and you're from here and and it was just amazing to see. And then they'd be in small groups together too. And they would have other, ways to communicate and get to know each other. It's really good.
Yeah. About 80% of our students are distance students. So even the last probably 3 years, that class has only been offered online, even for students that are on campus, just because we ended up having to cancel the on-campus version because we'd have, 6 or 7 students in it. And we're like, let's just put them in the online one together. Bless you. So that's something that's kind of, we've already been doing. I believe Mariah was next.
That was me, yeah. So I guess for me, I'm a current student at Indiana University doing philosophy, so my undergrad. So I guess for me, the biggest question I would have is like what the specific differences are between the apologetics programs and then the philosophy program, because I think I'm probably more leaned toward the philosophy, but I haven't ruled out the apologetics, so I'm kind of just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Guta.
I think if you join the philosophy program, you would take normal philosophy courses like philosophy of mind, epistemology, metaphysics, and other biblical courses as well. I think that are required OT, NT, and I don't know how many units, but you would have to take that. But in our program, on the science and religion program, you would also take philosophy, especially metaphysics and epistemology, if you are interested, philosophy of science, for example, and philosophy of neuroscience or philosophy of physics. But if you're having in your mind Talbot philosophy department, then you would be taking all the required courses in philosophy. But our program is also unique in that it really kind of provides a very strong grounding in philosophy, because we give the courses that I mentioned. But I don't know, were you having in your mind the Talbot philosophy department, or within our program were you referring, if you could?
Oh, probably more so the Talbot philosophy program, but I just saw that this was going on and I decided to hop on because I figured why not. So
Right.
Are you thinking of going on PhD wise in philosophy?
Well, that's actually a good question. I'm weighing my options in a lot of things at this point. So mostly right now it's actually a fight between doing my PhD in philosophy and then potentially law, but I have not decided on that yet. So, but I'm also really interested in apologetics. So again, that's kind of a hard triad of things to decide on.
Well, Professor Lewis has his JD, as well as his THM. I remember a student years ago who went through our program in like 1 year, crashed and burned. I don't know how she did it, before going into USC's law program. So there's preparation, that can be had from the apologetics going that way. I guess the quick thing I would say, two quick things, and I don't want to, I think you ought to hear, especially from Dr. Guta here, but apologetics has options for philosophy courses, like as electives taken from MASR. And the way I teach ethics is very philosophically oriented. And I also do philosophy of religion. but the bulk of the philosophy emphasis that we offer is in MASR. I was going to say too, if you know, or if you come to the point where you think like, oh, I really want to go into philosophy, and Dr. Guta, feel free to disagree here if you want, but I would think the straightest path to get into a PhD program would be from an MA philosophy. Now you have both degrees, Dr. Guta.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. If you want to shoot straight to PhD in philosophy, the Talbot philosophy program will give you all the required, the core courses. You will have that under your belt, and you don't have to retake, or you don't have to have like a need to take courses that our program wouldn't really offer you for a PhD program in philosophy. But at the same time, recently there's a trend where from Talbot philosophy, department, they are taking our courses. Like, for example,
Well, this actually was kind of going to be one of my questions, was whether or not it would be possible to potentially do both, or at least to take kind of an overlap, maybe.
Yeah, I think some students take, for instance, this coming fall, one Talbot student will be taking my philosophy of science class, because that course has no longer being offered in the department. It used to be, but no longer. So some students have taken, for example, philosophy of neuroscience from Talbot students, and some in fact wanted to take philosophy of physics, because all of these courses are important courses that would be considered as core philosophy electives, even in some schools as required courses. If you have, let's say, philosophy of physics under your belt, you don't have to take elsewhere, so you can have some of your credit units waived because of that. So yes, I think there's sometimes students are allowed to take our courses that are not available in the in the Talbot curriculum.
Mariah, are you able to relocate by chance to Southern California?
Yeah, I would be, if I was going to be coming, I would be headed to California. So
okay, good.
I mean, Notre Dame would be my top choice because I can still stay at home. But
right.
MA philosophy, I understand for them to be willing to write letters of recommendation for PhD programs, they want you to be in residence with them for what, at least one semester? Is that right? So you couldn't do it totally online with them and get recommendation letters from them to go on.
Yeah, and I just had a broad point. With the philosophy, you have those elements in all programs concentrated in MA philosophy. Within the MA Science and Religion program, philosophy is, I kind of think of it as the glue with theology and looking at science. That's really critical. And then a lot of those specialty classes. Within Christian apologetics, you're required to take, ethics and philosophy of religion. But you're getting kind of some of those core apologetics classes that people are interested in taking, but you still have 9 credits of electives. So if you wanted to take any of the 4 required science religion core, or any of the 2 philosophy classes that Dr. Guta mentions that he teaches, or any electives, or even some students in our programs will take the full metaphysics for 3 credits through the philosophy program, and the full epistemology for 3 credits through the philosophy program. So there's ways to mix and match depending on your end goal and where you see philosophy. Is it really the intersection of philosophy and kind of the science in religion? Or is it more general to philosophy and practical apologetics, or kind of philosophy central as a way to go to a PhD? Yeah. Christy and Sandra, I didn't see who was first, so one of you guys can go.
Hi there, I think I was next.
Okay.
I just had a general question about the program L2. Are your classes on a traditional semester, like 14 or 15 weeks, or are they more accelerated classes like, 6-8 weeks? That's the first question.
The typical one, is full semester. That has been designed in the past for Biola to be like 3-unit classes. Well, we've working on a history of having 2 unit classes for the most part. So they will be scheduled to run throughout the whole semester, but how a professor chooses to run that, may vary a little bit. I may, I'm trying to think how to flex it a little bit so I don't get totally inundated with term papers, at the end with 4 classes all at once, for example.
Sure.
And the research and writing class is an exception also. It's like 5 or 6 weeks.
Okay.
As just
Yeah,
one
the
unit.
majority are, the full semester is 15 weeks long.
Okay.
For the spring and fall, and
Yeah.
that's the same for the summer. The summer's not a primary required term, but there are options to take Old Testament, New Testament, historical theology, hermeneutics, as well as whatever special topic weekend seminar we offer. And since
Okay.
it hasn't been mentioned yet, our 1-week advanced apologetics lectures in residence. That's a 2-credit class that I recommend to everybody, even if, it's primarily designed really for distance students in mind, and say, okay, we know you're set, you're plugged in wherever you're at, but, the value of being in person for a period of time is so crucial for just fellowship and community and mentoring,
Sure.
and building those relationships. So that's a 2-credit elective class that can be taken any summer term. And then it would have 1 week, usually kind of mid June, that'll be offered. And you'll have all of our faculty, all the students that come out, and then we'll also bring in top guest lecturers from other departments and from kind of all around who we want to expose our students to.
Okay, thank you. My second question was, and maybe I just didn't find it on your website, is there a place where I can see what classes are required by the apologetics program?
Yes. I will go ahead and add that into the chat for both the Christian Apologetics program and the Science and Religion program. So list
Okay.
the required classes. And then we also have a link that is our kind of dynamic Biola schedule that lists, the specific classes that are available for this upcoming fall.
Okay,
Students would use that ahead of each semester to see which courses are available and in which format or who's teaching what.
sure.
And sign up for them. So we'll go ahead and add that in there in just a second.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, Sandra.
Yes, hi there. I'd be taking the course Distance Learning from England. And so my question is really, how would it work in terms of timing for online lectures? Would I be up in the middle of the night, or are they scheduled to kind of accommodate us folks from across the pond?
Yeah, the majority of classes are asynchronous and do have a recorded lecture that you can listen to at your convenience within that week. There are some classes where you can choose to sign up for a class that has a set time for a live lecture over Zoom. The most common of those would be the apologetics, special topics, or science and religion special topics classes that are done in a hybrid method for people who want to, but that have a Friday and Saturday lecture. You would know well in advance, and it's Friday 9 and Saturday basically 9 to 5, but just for that one weekend for that course. So sometimes, depending on the time zone, that works for part of the class, and we encourage our international students to catch as much of it as possible, for that time, and knowing that it's just for, those 2 days.
Yeah.
But if, part of it is, 3 to 5 a.m., we give you some leeway. You can kind of communicate that to the professor. And those are recorded for anybody to watch after the fact as well. So in that case, you kind of catch as much as you can live for that class, and then be able to watch, the rest via the recording.
I mean, I quite like a bit of interaction, with other students, and I think it's quite important to have that kind of sparky you know, conversations and things.
Yeah.
How could that work?
Well, I think partly just like Michael was trying to say, like this worldview analysis class I've got going on now, when I had my 2 days of lectures with that, I had a gentleman joining from England, you know, too. And, you know, I think he's told me, you know, that I think with some professors, they haven't really thought about, you know, the time zone, you know, changes. I know I'm trying to be very sensitive to that. So that, you know, yes, I have to work with a time, you know, if there's a lecture stipulated for me, like from 9 to 5 Pacific time, that's like, okay, I've got to work with that. So I know he's had to, you know, work with that some. The other thing I was going to say is when I try to have the kind of Zoom meetings with groups of students, like during a class, besides those class-wide lectures, live lectures, I will try to offer times that can work for whether it's Stuart or Andrew, you know, in the United Kingdom, or I've had adjust for, I had a group of 3 students from philosophy of religion who are all in East Asia, you know, and it's like, okay, I've got to, you know, come up with something for them because otherwise they just can't make it. You know, what do I do? You know? So yeah, I know I've sure tried to be sensitive to that.
Okay. Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Just to add something to what has already been said, I had a couple of students from England. Even this past semester, I had I think 3 students in my philosophy physics class. So what I did was the American students, I negotiated with them. You know, you guys have to understand what's happening here. So they, you know, kindly, you know, accepted my request, and we made it possible for the UK students to be able to fully participate online on a weekly basis in my class. You know, they never missed any session. So it's really it goes down to professors and students, you know, discussions and negotiations and make it possible. So that always happens. So I think it would, you know, it would be the same for you as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you hadn't caught Sandra earlier, you know, we have a semesterly faculty cohort that students are a part of, and you know that time is really chosen based upon the students. And I think the biggest thing is really just each class you're in, letting your professor know, you know, where you are at, just so that I think once they know that, then it's like, oh, sure, yeah, we could do this at 9 a.m. I mean, frankly, that's why Dr. Smith was the one who suggested, let's do one of these at 9 a.m. Usually we do it at 12 or at 5. And so part of us choosing this was like, hey, let's be more responsive to people who are overseas, or that this works better for their schedule. So just that communication ahead of time in that regard, or if you're really struggling with a class or you're having health issues or, you know, whatever it might be, communicating that to the professor so that they're aware. Because if they're aware, they can work with you. If they're not, then it's like the end of the semester comes and it's like, oh, I couldn't finish this and do this. And it's like, I didn't know about it. And then, you know, there's less options. But there are a lot of options when, you know, we do know about what's going on in your life, because we realize that everybody, you know, has things going on in their life and challenges and struggles. And, you know, we want to work with our students. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You bet. Keith, did you have another question, or did your hand get stuck?
I think my hand got stuck. I'll try to turn it.
Okay. You have to come up with another question. I'm just kidding. I think I can, here, I can lower your hand. There we go. All right. Joanna, what type of amazing dog is that?
He's a Weimaraner. This is
Ah.
my daily distractions. He wants to go outside.
Yep, we just are coming back to the office, and I have a 2-year-old Labradoodle that when my kids are out, you know, gives me his little cues of like, okay, which is probably a good thing because then I'm not just up in the house. But that's been one fun thing with the Zoom is seeing people's dogs and kids. And
I have my resident cat here.
Yep.
There's two of them. My cats have like learned more philosophy over the last year than I think like any cats on the planet. They're like very well educated now.
Has that been good for their relationship with you, or has that?
I don't know. I mean, I think teaching philosophy to a cat is kind of playing with the devil a little bit. So
They're already pretty sneaky. You don't want to give them too much information. Yeah. All right. We are pretty much kind of at our time here, and I want to be respectful of that. But I also wanted to point out, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. Even if they're questions that aren't for me, but you want me to pass on and you're like, oh, I forgot to ask, you know, Dr. Smith or Dr. Guta this, you know, particular question, you know, let me know and we can work with you. We are still accepting applications for the fall semester, or you can get ahead and apply for the spring semester if that works better. You know, for your schedule and what's going on in your life. So yeah, it was a pleasure getting to see all of you, and great questions. I hope everybody just has a blessed day.
All right. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very
Bye.
much, everyone. Yeah.
Everybody, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.